So when the president Celes Aguard was elected, there was a question. In fact, actually, let me find the name, and then we can go back. I guess I could have just searched for the word amendment, but hold on. Veto? Can I search for the word veto? Nope. How about amendment? Okay, I don't know how to spell, maybe? Nope, maybe not. This isn't it either. Bellaron, that's his name. Bellaron. This dude. So, Senator Suvio Bellaron wanted a total ban on capital punishment. This was done in 2019, leading up to the election, right? It passed the Galente Senate. Oh, man. It's 8 o'clock. Alexa, stop. Oh. Whatever. So the Intaki Senator Suvio Bellaron proposed a bill banning public executions. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. What? Let's look at this. In 2009, this is how far this shit goes back. Intaki Senator Suvio Bellaron proposed a bill banning public execution in yesterday's tumultuous Senate session. The debate was heated with numerous outbursts on both sides of the issue. Senator Bellaron was strident in his condemnation of President Fortran's handling of the Eder execution. Blah, blah, blah. So Bellaron has had this like crusade to get rid of capital punishment within the Federation. And then in 2019, he had then again proposes a total ban on capital punishment. Proposed a new bill aimed at the establishment of capital punishment. Senator Bellaron's bill come in the wake of the public outrage of the Yinmei nation's use of punitive exile, which critics accuse of being little more than prolonged death sentence. The proposed measure closely resembles another bill the senator proposed in YC 111 after the considerable outcry of the thanks, Kat, of the execution of Anvint Etur. In the Senate session, Senator Bellaron echoed activist sentiments, quote, "As a matter of ugly necessity, we must limit the legal protections of those who break the law. That much is not in contention. I ask instead, how many freedoms need we sacrifice on the altar of retribution? Some have decreed no right is too sacred." To make his point, the Intaki senator read the names of children evacuated from Lersideron 6 who were innocent of the crimes of their parents. Senator Farron Shu represented the Yinmei interests on the planet of Chandeli, accused Senator Bellaron of misrepresenting the situation, blah, blah, blah. Senator Farron Shu's reference to Senator Bellaron by family name alone was a breach of the rules of Senate, floor etiquette, blah, blah, blah. So then, I think this is in then, right? Yep, January. So then 4 months later, An extraordinary scene just before the federal Senate convened for debate this morning. Senator Nakula Chatarak punched Senator Suvio Bellaron in the face, breaking his nose and sending him tumbling down the auditorium stairs. Senator Chatarak is a reborn Intaki representing an Intaki system subdistrict and is Suvio's junior by several decades. When Senate gendarmes approached the two to restrain them from further hostilities, Senator Chatarak excused himself from Senate business for the day. Chaos ensued as Bellaron supporters shouted for the gendarmes to restrain Chatarak over the loud objections and wild gesticulations of opponents. Order was restored after Bellaron requested his faction to return to their places. Senator Bellaron brushed off the affair as a professional disagreement and declined to file charges against Chatarak. I'd rather not distract from the important ongoing discussions any more than Senator Chatarak already has. Can you imagine a Senate that puts aside personal grievances in the moment, including assault, in order to try to actually get work done? That's fantasy. After the assault, Senate debated centered around a directive bill Bellaron had previously submitted to the floor, dedicated to abolishing capital punishment at the federal level. Early debate has suggested senators from Essence, Vergevender, Syliana, and Placid have been receptive to the proposal, though observers were surprised when other reborn senators presented strong arguments against the legislation. No further violence interrupted this session. I wonder if every district has a federal administration station? That's actually a really good question. I know that Valor has a bunch of the stuff because it's like the administrative capital. Then after months of campaigning, debate, committee reviews, and numerous revisions to Senator Suvio Bellaron's original proposal, head of Senate Almond Mize calls a vote under the federal directive bill that would ban capital punishment at a federal level, institute guidelines for its lower divisions of the government. In the end, the vote was split 471 to 422 in favor, with 10 abstentions. So, and then Bellaron declares candidacy for the presidential elections. So if you see here, let's look at the rest of it. Notably, given Senator Bellaron's, reacting to President Rodin's statement on the capital punishment bill. Where does it say? Responding to the news. Here's where it gets important. Or interesting. Responding to the news, outgoing President Jacobs Rodin issued a short statement. Quote, "As Federation President, I respect the decision of the Senate, but I consider the issue raised by the federal directive too serious and far too reaching to be the subject of an approval or veto process by myself as an outgoing second-term president. I am thereby tabling the federal directive to ban federal capital punishment and regulate sub-federal punishment to the consideration of the next president of the Federated Union of Galente Prime." Senator Bellaron is upset by this. So now, if Senator Bellaron gets elected, and also at this point, Celes Aguard also announces her candidacy. A few disruptions later, in fact, when the election first attempted, there was a simultaneous terrorist attack that took out all but two of the different members. Governor Celes Aguard's motorcade was attacked in a major bombing outside of New Rennes Stadium on Mai 4. Massive casualties are reported. The status of Governor Aguard is unknown at this time. The Mai system comms network is sporadically dropping in and out of service. So Celes Aguard was bombed, and several reports indicate that multiple explosions and/or a gas attack took place at the Intaki Assembly chambers while Senator Suvio Bellaron was giving a presidential campaign speech. Intaki Prime planetary communications networks are almost all offline, and connections to the Intaki system and federal FDL relays have collapsed. The status of Senator Bellaron and the members of the Intaki Assembly is unknown. Okay? Didn't that happen in Caldari too, a political attack? The CEP building was bombed during the Dread attacks, which led to the chairman of the CEP resulting in a coma, which led to the new chairman rising to power. Can't remember his name. I can never remember his name when I need to. Okay, so, and then the rest of these guys don't really matter as much for this part of the conversation, but we can also see Celes Aguard reportedly killed. This is not brought up enough, I think. It might... Saraki, thank you. It might should bother you that the president of the Federation was successfully assassinated like 2 months before they were elected. That might want to keep that in the back of your mind. Especially when there's all these they always keep coming up with like investigation. Every time there's a new like terrorist cell, there's like an investigation to see if they were involved. There's been investigations to see if the Triglavians did this. There's been investigations to see if EOM did this. Yeah, it does seem a little bit sus, right? Senator Suvio Bellaron reported to be hospitalized in Navi Akat, unconfirmed. So Suvio Bellaron was hospitalized and was hit by a death glow chemical weapon, potentially. Celes Aguard was killed. So I got to ask, like, this whole... First of all, we didn't control the election, right? The election is just an event that we get to see played out every 6 years or whatever it is. So, you know, the fact that there was a terrorist attack during the election, I don't even think it ever had any implication in-game at all. Like, I remember even going the day that these attacks were happening when they were saying all the fluid routers were down. And I was expecting there to be, like, blackout in Galente space, but that wasn't happening. Jazz, Stratus,
Immortal.
CM. So it leads me to wonder, why do this in the first place? Why have this lore beat happen? Especially since basically there's an investigation and then everybody pretty much moves on and they just have an election. It just seems very odd to me. Next. This is just stuff about... Here's the politics behind the election, who has support, etc., etc. Here is the speech, hopefully. Consideration has also been given to the medical status of a number of leading presidential candidates who were seriously injured in the terrorist attack on the 27th of February. Governor Celes Aguard, Senator Suvio Bellaron, and Mayor Shalin Ramnev are all considered out of danger. Governor Agard's personality synchronization following body death and recloning is understood to have left her with some experiential time loss. Why have these details in if they're not going to be important? Fellow presidential candidate, Councillor Wayaki Kayara, you guys love it when I have to pronounce these names, have been assisting in her something therapy. Senator Bellaron has regained consciousness following successful treatment. Super sus. Where's Rodin's speech? Suvio Bellaron placed in medical coma. Here it is. Wait, no, never mind. Celes Aguard survives assassination via backup clones. So this is what happened in between. Yes, Bellaron was placed in a medical coma to reduce risk of neurological damage. You know the other sus thing that happened? If you remember, I mentioned 2 candidates were not attacked. Okay? Those 2 candidates were the player, Julius Soder, and the head of the Black Eagles, Mentis Black. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that means anything. I'm sure it means nothing. It just seems kind of odd that he would be the only NPC not attacked during this particular terrorist operation. Could the player... Right, exactly. Like, I don't think that was even a valid thing to do, necessarily. Unless he happened to be logged in at the time, in which case Delegate Zero could have, like, assassinated him. Which that would have been epic. But, I mean, like, my point was is that that's understandable. The NPC one is pretty remarkable. Senator Suvio Bellaron requests Senate Intelligence Committee investigation to derail and sorrow activities in Caldari Galente militia war zone. Oh, I just caught that. So I've read this before, but now we know that Suvio Bellaron is specifically the senator for the Intaki system. So he's not just talking about anywhere in the Galente Caldari war zone. He's specifically talking about that Ugalis Intaki area. Here we go. Here's the speech. There's no pattern in Galente constellation station types? Aw. But I mean, doesn't that actually, like, that reflects their character? The whole point of Galente is homogeneity, or like, you know, everybody has personal freedom, but through that personal freedom, individuality is kind of, or individual, like, presence becomes minimized, right? Like, everywhere in the Galente is the same as everywhere else. Rather than factioning, which we see in the other empires. Den925 us, thank you for joining us down the rabbit hole, which is EVE Online. All right. Excuse me. My fellow citizens of the great Democratic Galente Federation, we have been attacked. We have all been attacked in the most infamous act of villainy since the betrayal of the traitor Anvent Entur. Grave as his treachery was, it was eclipsed by an attack not simply on the Federation, but crucially on the foundational principles of this great democracy. Let me be clear. Like the traitor Eturer, those who perpetuated these vile acts on our way of life shall be brought to justice swiftly and surely. Allow me first, my fellow citizens, to mourn with you those who we have lost, for those injured so gravely, and for all the victims and families affected by these outrages. It is my sad duty to report the confirmed death toll from these evil attacks stand at over 7,000. Tragically, it is likely to be even higher in the final accounting. Many tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, have suffered injury. The physical attacks on the presidential candidates, federal installations, and civilian infrastructure accounts for the greater number of these immediate casualties. Sadly, such was the scope and effect of these parallel network attacks. It is sure very many will have been injured consequently, and many more will lose their lives. We will mourn in full as a democracy and a federation in due time. Now, I wish to update you all on the status of those leading Democratic presidential candidates who were attacked in the course of last night's events. I am glad to report and confirm that Governor Celes Aguard is alive and recovered in a secure facility. Though she suffered physical death with the bombing of New Rhines, along with so many others, her federally registered personality backup and clone were successfully restored. The assassins failed here, even as they brutally murdered thousands. I can also report that Senator Suvio Bellaron is alive and in stable conditions following the transfer by federal Marines to a secure medical facility in the Intaki system. We hope and trust that he will fully recover. Mayor Shalin Ramnev's condition remains grave, though I am told it is stabilized. I have directed federal Marines to secure the hospital in Arcurio and the medical corps to render all necessary assistance. Councillor Waaki Keara was slightly injured in the terrorist attack made on his life while he visited military veterans on Manar Segnade. Or Seginde. I am told these brave men and women who have already given so much to our Federation unhesitantly fought to protect him. One veteran has been hospitalized, but Councillor Kayara is expected to make a full recovery. It would appear that there had been no direct attempt made on the lives of Senator Kellen Ontbod, Chief Director Mentis Black, or General Juliana Sutter. Oh, okay, fine. So Ontbod too. Though our initial intelligence assessments is that they were all targets. If these violent acts of terror and attempted assassinations of presidential candidates were not evidence enough of a monstrous plot to strike deep into the heart of our democracy, which they plainly are, then the attacks on our federal and planetary communications more than confirm the base intents of these attacks. With deep regret, we agree with the Federal Elections Commission's decision to suspend elections until further notice. We are resolved that the suspension shall be short and that the necessary vital democratic process will work in the people's will as soon as possible. The federal administration, working with all federal agencies, Concord agencies, and trusted commercial partners, have restored the core functionality of the federal FTL communications infrastructure. Even so, much data has been lost and many planetary networks remain unstable or providing limited service. My administration is working tirelessly to restore full communication functions at every level of the Federation, regionally, system-wide, and on every planet in orbital. I can report that the federal and civilian FTL connections to Solitude region has been restored after a mercifully brief period of disconnection. Military and security forces networks retain basic connectivity. The Federation is grateful to Concord for making available SCC and DED bandwidth for Federation government traffic. I am also grateful to the measured and generous responses to this tragedy, not only from Concord, but from our interstellar neighbors, the Minmatar Republic, Caldari State, and Amara Empire. All have assisted in some measure, and a greater tragedy may well have been avoided by caution and forbearance. I must express my particular deep gratitude to Sanmatar Malatu Shikor of the Tribal Council of the Minmatar Republic for their unstinting and valuable support during this crisis. Our alliance, founded upon our common belief in the liberty of human beings, remains strong. Let me now turn into the future. I wish to reassure you all, simply as a fellow citizen of the Galente Federation, but yes, as the president of our great democracy, that the continuity of democratic government is my #1 priority. Meeting that priority requires the reestablishment and reinforcement of the security of the Federation and its citizens. It requires that democratic elections be held securely and in full freedom. It requires the peaceful transfer of power to the next duly elected president of the Galente Federation. I pledge to meet the priority that I have laid out in full. My fellow citizens, amidst this scene of tragedy and villainy, take heart. The Federation will endure. The Federation is liberty, and liberty can never die. That's a presidential speech. Accents is just all over the place. Well, again, so that's the thing. The corporations aren't affiliated with individual districts in the Galente Federation. Whereas in the Amar, all of the corporations are tied to a specific house. And in the Caldari, all of the corporations are some sub-corporation of one of the megacorps. In the Galente, the corporations are independent of the government. The lack of factionalism in the Galente just makes it less interesting. I mean, an ethno-state from the outside looks pretty stable, I guess. No, I don't necessarily mean it that way. They've got plenty of immigrants, but you get what I'm saying. If there was a Galente faction that you could actually root for as a Caldari, Intaki, Quaif, Yin Mei is fine, but mostly Intaki. You only see the factionism in a small portion of their race-specific missions. Yeah, because again, they are more united, and they have, you know, their intelligence agencies that ensure this is true. So then we're still not done. Pretty sure we consider Intaki its own sovereign entity. Intaki is part of Galente. Senator Bellaron is from the Intaki delegation in the Galente Senate. What are you even talking about? The Intaki Assembly is part of the Galente Federation. That said, the Galente has, in recent past, in the last few years, demonstrated their inability to actually provide protection to the Intaki, and therefore we've seen more and more of it being relegated to the Mortis Legion. Anywho, oh yeah, that's our liberation plans for the future. My bad. There's Ugali's stuff. Hold on. So then, in her victory, when Celes Aguard wins, consider the Intaki Syndicate, who loosely claim and share the Syndicate region. The Intaki Syndicate are not part of the Federation. But yes, ethnic Intaki have expanded outside of the Galente. But the Intaki system and the Intaki Assembly are functionaries of the Galente Federation. The Intaki Syndicate are explicitly the Intaki that left the Federation because they didn't like how the Galente treated the Caldari. I see. Yes, the Syndicate is sovereign-ish. The Syndicate is basically Switzerland in the fact that, like, everybody relies on them because they have the best banks. They're the money sharks. But the Intaki people, the Intaki system, the Intaki, thing is part of the Galente. Less into drugs, more into not controlling drugs. Yeah, I think you're confusing the Syndicate with the Serpentis. Just because the Syndicate tolerates the Serpentis a lot more doesn't necessarily mean that they're the same people. Governor Aguard's victory represents solid backing for our unity, security, diversity message and program across the Galente Federation. However, the appeal and political impact of Shalin Ramnav's platform of reconciliation and strong self-governance is clear from her emergence as a very strong challenger out of the field of well-known, experienced, popular politicians. The result perhaps represents the least clear endorsement for a presidential winner in the last 2 decades, but the presidential mandate for Governor Aguard is beyond doubt when considering all metrics. Of the clear losers, Senator Suvio Bellaron will be pleased to have finished substantially ahead of Mentis Black, and his position as leading liberal voice in the Senate will likely not be damaged. The future of the as-yet unsigned Bellaron bill, don't forget, the Bellaron bill has not been signed. Rodin punted that. The Bellaron bill to outlaw capital punishment does, however, seem in doubt, given the support that Governor Aguard drew from the Yinmei and Manar communities skeptical of central inventionist measures such as in the bill. President Aguard wins and maintains her power by catering to the borderlands, by telling the people on the fringes of the Gallente Federation that you belong and we respect you. And she wins those people over and becomes like a populist to the fringe nations, which is one of the reasons why this whole war zone thing kind of becomes a thing, because like that's literally where her power comes from. So she's very interested in continuing to support, say, like the Intaki or whatever. I do want to bring up every time I do. I love this. Quaif Mega Corporation accused of using soft drink responsive subcranial nanocontroller trial to push favored Senate candidates. God, I gotta say that this has got to be my favorite headline in the history of like in other news headlines. This has got to be my favorite. Gotta be. The Intaki system bearing its name is in LOSEC. Just mentioning it relative to the internal factionalization within the Federation, and Ash's mention of the Federation is not equal in employing its force to protect all areas and factions. So this goes back to one of the things that we were talking about earlier when it came to like high sec, low sec. I can't remember what exactly brought it up, but this is a good example. So when Celes Aguard stitched Gallente proper to Solitude through the Kenrick Stargate, that Stargate was in LOSEC. There was no connection for players to safely be able to go from one to the other, and yet it still counted as connecting the Federation together again for the first time since the Syndicate left. Basically, security status, as we know it, represents Concord's authority and presence within that system. It does not mean how much Empire influence is in that system. Okay? So just because something is in LOSEC doesn't mean it's not just as populated as other places. People live in Detroit, you know? You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? People live in other places like that. People live in... But more importantly, Concord is not dealing with Empire issues. Those are two totally different tracks of control. That's why you can have the Old Man Star adjacent to Valor and still be less in control, because those systems are just in contention due to the drafting of the Emergency War Powers Act. So, yeah. Corporate influencer technologies over Alestra ergonomics and FedMart and Quaif election activities. Ah, the ghost ship shows up at the same time. Juliana Soder congratulates President-elect. Thomas Space Detroit. I mean, yep. But like, let's think about it this way. You go to LOSEC, there are stations there. There are people that live in those stations. There are planets there. There are people that live in the planets. And to those people, the security status of the entire system itself may not be as relevant to them. Look at Scarcon. I mean, yes, it probably is towards the edge of their borders. they might have less control over it, but it's not necessarily true.